Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or your digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organization. Each and every episode, we sit down with leaders from various fields, just like you're grabbing a cup of coffee with them. We dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you define real power in leadership? My goodness, we have leadership all around us. If you have influence in your life, you are a leader. If you work for an organization, there's probably an org chart where maybe that organizational chart defines who's in charge, the power that you have. And so today I am so excited to dive into this topic, especially since we've been in this series called Lead with People, and we're striving to take steps forward to lead with trust and collaboration and not lead from fear and manipulation and pressing that control on people. And so today I'm so excited. My guest, we've gone back and forth. We're on opposite sides of the world, and some storms have put a pause in some of our regular scheduled conversations. But here we are today. We are back at it, and I can't wait for you to meet her. Sylvia, thank you so much, and welcome to the Speak with People podcast.
Well, thank you, Jason. I'm really thrilled to be here, really honored to be part of this special series, Speak with Leaders. And I'm really looking forward to our discussion and maybe to inspire people to rethink some of the old ways that we see leadership and power.
I love it. And you've written a book, Who's in Charge? Lead with Real Power and Create an Impact in Chaotic World. So I'm so excited to dive into that, specifically some of the pillars you talk about. And before we kind of jump into all of that, could you give us, I have loved following you on LinkedIn. I've learned so much, but could you give our listeners just a little peek into your story, who you are, what you do, how you got to this place where you are today?
Let's start at the beginning. So I'm German born, brought up by parents, though, who were very international, who themselves went abroad in their younger years. So we were always like speaking, at least as a child, I was hearing different languages. So it opened my mind and my heart to the world. And on another level, also, I think I'm a very multifaceted person. Always very into sports and music and the arts. Actually, I looked recently at one of my school reports. They were my standard best subjects at school. Just until the very last years when I got more interested also in the academic subjects. And who woke me up to power was my teacher of ancient Greek, who read Plato and Aristotle with us, which asked all these questions about how do human societies work, what is power, what is politics, how does influence work. I mean, these early philosophers asked all these questions, and I was really inspired to study that more deeply. And then I was in between, like, do I study arts, do I study psychology, or do I study politics? And then I ended up studying politics, international relations, to study power in politics and to understand how it really works. And but the thing is, I always looked at the more psychological aspects of it. So I actually did security studies, but I came back to looking at how does communication in security studies work, and how does communication in transnational relations work. So how do transnational actors, so NGOs and companies, how do they influence politics? And so I wrote my master's and PhDs about these subjects. And all the while I also kept being active in the arts, so in singing and acting and painting. I did a few exhibitions also. And I say that because it influenced the way that I then started to work in organizations. So at around 30 years of age, I left academia, luckily, because I found out that I'm much more alive when I work in the practical work.
Mm.
It turns me on, so to say, when I can write something that has a practical, immediate use and not a paper that maybe some peers will read and maybe not, and then we all discuss and think we are very important. Uh, so I was more inspired to be of use in the practical world. And I realized that when I was working in corporate, I still took with me my artist's approach. I mean, as an artist, for instance, you learn whether it's in dance. So I did a lot of dance improvisation and abstract painting. You learn to follow the process, to trust the process. So you do not start with a fixed idea about what will be the outcome, but you learn while doing it. Today we call it agile prototyping. And I brought that in very naturally into my corporate work. And then, of course, when I discovered coaching, I realized that's where I can naturally bring it in.
Mm.
Because as a coach, also we do not we not train. We are in conversation with people, and therefore we co-create something with them, and actually it's quite an artistic process. And from the dance, uh, I came into embodiment work, body work, embodiment in coaching. I just did a masterclass on leadership this week in London, and using also techniques of embodiment, of dance, of voice work to help
Huh.
leaders communicate with more power and influence. So I'm a bit of a mix of many things.
Yep. Wow. Wow. So those of us who have never been to Luxembourg, what is an average day like? Today is November 15th. So is it your fall season? Is it already starting to get chilly? Not so
Oh
much.
yes, so it's fall because we're in northern hemisphere. It's between Luxembourg is between France, Belgium, and Germany. It's a tiny country, and it's very international because it houses European institutions and many headquarters of large international companies. So it's a very interesting country to live in because it's very international. So our kids grew up learning several languages. They speak five
Wow.
and six languages, one five, the other
Yeah.
six, and I learn them a lot too.
Goodness. Wow. That's amazing. And so you were just in London. Do you enjoy, I know listening to your story, do you enjoy the being in the room with a team of leaders, leading them through that process? And kind of the part B, and this is kind of selfish because this is also what I do, and so I'm always trying to learn from amazing leaders like you. Are there any things that any items or practices when you're delivering or leading them through a workshop that you employ to make sure it's as sticky as possible? So in a week, 2 weeks, a month, a few months, what they've kind of gone through in the leadership workshop is still kind of ringing true.
You mean for them or to
Yes.
practice?
Yes.
It's so different
Mm.
because it really depends on the subject. Do they work on their communication, which is frequently a subject that I work on, or whether it's team collaboration, which is also one of my
Yep.
key subjects. There it really depends. But for instance, on Tuesday in London, it was about energy and voice, and so we talked about life purpose, and they will work on that because
Wow.
we started with purpose and we ended with intention. So they are going to work with
Wow.
intention, work with that over time. And then I shared practices for physical energy and voice work. And actually, just before coming here, I registered a video for them so that they can watch again how this physical exercise worked. Because it's one thing to do it once, but then you want to see it once more, and then they can practice that. So that's an example, but they
Wow.
can could be very different things.
Oh, that's amazing. So, were did you get to a place in your career where something broke for you when it came to the power imbalance? I know for me, I was working on MBA. I was working for an organization where, to me, in my opinion, it was a giant imbalance of power. People on top led through fear, they led through control, and I just got to the place where I thought there's got to be a better way. So wondering where
Mm.
the passion for you came from, to study and research and then write and then, teach about this topic.
Yeah. So as I said before, it actually started very early for me, like
Mm.
reading Plato, then studying politics, because politics is about power. And then when I entered corporate, I was more a like part of power, and so being part of and observing how it worked. And I saw early on that certain force and control and silo power mechanisms don't work
Mm.
because they stifle collaboration. Then when like you having worked in a large organization, you will have experienced that you reach out your hand to the colleagues in another department and get told off, because how could you give away power to them? And I've experienced that. But
Mm.
then I've also been able to show, hey guys, we are not losing power. We are gaining in power because we are going to be more competent and we are going to have greater outcomes. And I've had this experience again and again, like from my first job at the European Commission to my later jobs in consulting at the European Investment Bank, when sometimes you're like regarded with suspicion when you collaborate, but you can also then show that actually you can create great outcomes. And
Wow.
so that was one of the elements I saw, that when we do that, we create greater outcomes. And then, of course, as you also just alluded to already, when there is this force and control mechanism from the top, people are more focused on how they can protect themselves from threats from the top or from their direct boss. So they do not have their attention mainly on how to get the job done, but how to cover their backside. And of course, that does not help the organization. And it doesn't help innovation also, because then people are afraid to take risks because they will be criticized if they make a little mistake. And all that made me think there must be a better way.
Mm.
And so already while I was in corporate, I was privileged enough to be given positions where I could create change in this. So for some years, I led the organizational health program at the European Investment Bank, where we worked to improve leadership in exactly the sense of supporting collaboration, giving more
Wow.
autonomy, creating more functional and healthy teams, and later developing a new leadership model that would also incorporate these aspects. And then when I left the European Investment Bank in 2021, my focus was really like, how can I bring this to a broader public, to serve more leaders and more organizations in this way, and ending up writing the book, Who's in Charge.
Wow. Wow. So talk to us then about kind of redefining power and leadership, because we all kind of have our preconceived notions. We kind of experience different things, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we already know that the traditional view of power is something like force and control, a mix of force and control. But that view is kind of stagnant.
Mm.
Or sometimes I like to ask people, do you want to sit on power or do you want to use it to create something? And of course, there are people who really like to sit on power, or they want to use power for their personal benefit. And I guess we will always have people like this. But if you, as leader, want to make an impact, if you want to create something, then this kind of power, whether you're leader of a company, of a team, whether you lead of a country, of a party, whatever, that kind of power doesn't lead anywhere, because especially in our very complex and yes, even sometimes chaotic world today, this kind of power does not generate the engagement. It doesn't generate the collaboration, and the like the walking of extra miles, the inventiveness, the innovation that we need for companies to succeed and for our societies to tackle the major challenges that we are facing.
Wow. Wow.
So
What,
that's the invitation. Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just wanted to
Finish
add,
that.
that's really the invitation to say, like, if you as a leader want to create something, if you want to make a difference, if you want your company to succeed, then you have to rethink power. If you just want to sit on it, probably the old way is enough. But if you want to create something, you have to rethink it.
Wow. Amazing. What are there specific elements that are essential to successful leadership? I know you write about this in the book, and so I'd love to kind of dive into those.
In terms of power, we have to understand what power really is. So with my clients, I often work on what's your strategy of power. So what's your understanding and therefore your way of applying power. And so to understand that force and control sometimes are needed. So when you're in emergency, or when you have to like set a boundary, you sometimes need force and control, or you control KPIs. But in order to be a leader and to lead your company through difficulties, or to create impact or create great results over time, you need something else. So you need, first of all, to get followers behind you so that they actually want to work with you and for you and give their best efforts. And one way of doing that is to show up with authenticity. And how do you show up with authenticity? That is not, hey guys, I am who I am. I can't help it, because that's not actually being authentic. That can be being an authentic kind of fool, maybe, or an authentic difficult person, but it's not really being authentic. Being authentic is that you are aligned with your values. That what you do is actually what you say, and that your actions reflect your values. That's being authentic. So when you're authentic, then people will follow you because they can trust you. So this inner alignment is a very strong factor of power, of leadership, of strong leadership. The other thing is to create alignment with others. So in order to go forward, to go beyond surface agreements, but really to create an agreement on what do we together believe in, what are the values that we share, and therefore how can we trust each other? We do trust each other because there's this foundation, so we can go forward and have a strong alliance. The other thing is to have strong power is to be able to co-create. Now, what is that? That goes beyond collaboration. Collaboration means that I do my thing, you do yours, and sometimes we put things together. Co-creation actually means that we share, we pool information, resources, and some of our control in order to have more power together.
Wow.
And then we can co-create by trusting each other, by saying, I do not have to control everything myself. I can let you in my things, and you will let me in into yours, because together we will achieve more. It's like the collaboration between a lending department and risk management in a company. Where we stop protecting our information, but we share it so that other people can help us, or we can help them to together achieve more. And so that's the co-creation. Then I like to really to speak about the power of love, which is not a cuddly idea. So it's not like we all love each other and then things will be better. It is about care, genuine care, but it's more than that. The power of love and leadership is really about creative leadership, so that we really care about what we do. We don't care about saving our backside, but we care about creating something. We care about the outcomes for our company, for our country, for our citizens. And therefore, we are oriented to create something rather than to just save our power. From that, we generate an enormous power. It's more competent, more effective leadership. And there's actually a lot of research about that this kind of leadership is more effective than the reactive, protecting kinds of leadership. And then finally, to succeed as a leader today, we have to cultivate our own personal power. So what is that? It's like our ability to manage our energy, our executive presence, and our communication skills to apply all this power effectively. So it's not
Wow.
only in our heads and our beliefs, but it's really embodied. We can do it and not only think about it.
Wow. Well, goodness, I can already think of a few companies that I've worked with that I need to recommend your book kind of being required reading because, you know, for their culture. I mean, if we live this way as a leader, my goodness, I mean, companies would transform overnight. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the co-creating. I mean, so often it's mine, me. You know, I do some training for financial advisors and within some banks actually. And so one of the banks I've worked with, they have a struggle with licensed bankers on the bank side sharing information to advisors in kind of the, you know, this is my client, you know, my need, instead of saying,
Yeah,
wait a
yeah.
minute, we're in this together and we can help our clients succeed at a whole new level. So
Yeah.
as a manager, then, you know, overseeing a team, you know, a lot of times we don't have control over the whole, but as a manager, what are some practical steps that I can take to, you know, help my team kind of live out some of these leadership values?
A really important base I've seen again and again is to create the trust in the
Mm,
team, trust and psychological safety, as we call it today, and to create trust with other teams. So if we don't have that, you can't do anything else really. And so how do you create trust? One thing as a leader is to create that atmosphere through your communication, through your behaviors, that people know that they can talk to each other, they can talk to you, and that it's allowed to make mistakes because we can learn from them. Not to make mistakes because it's wonderful to make mistakes, but because they can happen, and fantastic, we can learn and improve through them. The other thing is what Patrick Lencioni calls vulnerability-based trust,
mm,
is the ability to actually admit mistakes, to apologize, and to sometimes be personal also, to also to speak about values, and sometimes to speak about ourselves, our personal questions and struggles. Although I always find that's a good thing, but we can also respect people's boundaries. Often I have people in seminars who say, well, but I'm not the person who shares many personal stories.
mm.
And I always encourage people to do so because it helps us to get closer and to be human and feel each other as human. But first, there's also oversharing, like telling each other everything, and then it
Yep.
becomes kind of banal rather than really intimate and personal. And the other thing is sometimes it's actually in business more valuable to be personal about business.
Mm,
That is, that I open myself about why I care about something. Like, why is that project really important to me? Why am I being so stubborn about this issue at the boardroom table? So not to hide behind someone has said it's the rule, we've always done it like this, or I will push you to, but to be open about why personally that is important to you, why it matters to you. For me, that is actually the most important vulnerability in business. And then that sometimes leads to the personal stories because one can share, like it actually is related to a family value that I grew up
mm.
with. And sharing that will really create trust in a
Wow.
team.
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
really important, and the same is then between teams.
Yes.
And we've worked really successfully with teams and with like multiple teams in a room to help them build that trust as a foundation, really to go into co-creation.
Wow. Wow. So give us some advice for the listener who's working in their office and they've been there for a while and they have a very toxic, unhealthy boss. And this person has been at the company for a while. They just kind of keep slipping through. Lots of turnover in their division. They lead out of a place of fear and control, and you know, what does the person who is, you know, they're being led by someone who is, you know, I find sometimes probably more on the narcissistic side. They're perverting some of their leadership power. They abuse through their words. You know, what steps can that leader take? And would love to know your advice on that.
That's a really difficult one. I mean, I've been in the situation a couple of times in my career, and first of all, I think the question is, what do you value? What's most important? For me, my job and making a difference in the role I was in was always more important than my kind of ease of living. So I always decided to then face the situation and make my proposals, stick with it, gently challenge that leader. However, since that leader will be, as you already said, fear driven, not to further instill their fear. So one of my bosses once said, "Oh, Sylvia, I really dislike that you have such good relationships with the board." And I was like really saddened because that could have helped him. But he was fearful that I could be stronger than him. And that's something that we have to look at. So what I've learned is to understand, to look out for the fears of people, so not to instill them further, and then to explain to such a boss what we are doing and how that is not against them. So not in these words, because then they could feel that this is maybe a scheme, but just help them relax, because indeed it's mostly driven by fear.
Wow.
And to have the energy to do that, you really have to love your job. If you don't
Yes.
love your job that much, my other advice would be to find a new job, a
Yes.
new boss, a new job, because it's not worthwhile. But if you love your job, if you're very passionate, then stick with it by yes, playing your own game, finding allies outside, and reckoning with the like understanding that your boss comes from fear.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. That's so profound. Ooh, talk to us for a minute about gender roles in power and leadership. You know, I adore my mother. She's one of the bravest, most brilliant women I've ever met in my life. She grew up in a time where, you know, her dad told her she couldn't go to college. You're just a woman. And then, you know, she worked in the workplace in the 70s and the 80s where, you know, there was only certain jobs she could have because she was a woman. And, you know, some of her stories about her mistreatment, it's just disgusting. And so now here we are in 2024, and, you know, I'd love to know from your perspective, you know, have we made great strides, advancement? You know, are women finding new levels of power and leadership than ever before? So I'll leave it with that. I know it's kind of a big, deeper one, but
The
you know,
big
just
one.
from your background and your expertise, I would very much value your opinion and your thoughts on this.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think we can see, if we look at companies and organizations, how many women and great women we have at the top of
Mm,
organizations. Look at the IMF, at the European Commission, many governments today in the Nordic country, in New Zealand, not now, but for several years we had the great Jacinda Ardern. And we have, like at the World Bank, several female leaders. We had an excellent female candidate for the US elections. So we have these female leaders, and they show their excellence. Doesn't say that all female leaders are excellent, but they show the excellence of women and also of a certain style of leadership. that can often be found in women. And it's actually a leadership style that is very much adapted to lead in complexity because
Mm.
it is more collaborative and it's more engaging and it's more purpose driven than the old style leadership.
Yep.
At the same time, I mean, I have daughters who are 20 and 22 years. I tell them, don't take things for granted because we can see also that there is a backlash movement of old power people or people who are very fond of patriarchy and who would like to turn the clocks back.
Mm.
And so we have to be attentive to not lose the progress that we have made, which I think would not only be a loss for women, it would be really a loss for the world.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I have a 24-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old daughter, and we work very hard, to empower them and make sure they
Mm.
have, all the skills they need to succeed. And um, sometimes I do it in not the best way because my oldest just got a position in a HR company, and I'll say things like, "Oh, it won't be long till you'll be leading your your area," just because she's brilliant, and I love to watch her succeed. And so, always curious about this. As we kind of wrap up the conversation, you know, how can we lead in a way, because we're always probably going to come across those people who want to see the old ways,
Mm.
come back, rear their ugly head of the, power abuse and, leading in those ways. So how can we lead as leaders who are choosing to lead in healthy ways, who are choosing to collaborate and co-create and, that way, how do we stand strong in the face of, this old guard at
Mm.
times?
Yeah. I'm a strong believer in mastery.
Mm.
So, and therefore in like intentional conscious practice. So leadership is a bit like high level sports or the arts. It's great to be a leader, but in order to excel as a leader, you have to be similar to a high level athlete or an artist because you have to practice your craft.
Mm.
And that's also a reason why I wrote Who's in Charge, because it has these three pillars. One is to master your way of managing your energy
Hmm.
so you can sustain your energy and also manage the way that your energy impacts, like consciously manage your energy to
Yep.
impact people and the environment you work on. And the second is to understand power and work with power, and the crucial central part there being also the personal power. So to know how to what makes your executive presence, how people will see you, how you want to be seen, how you communicate, how you connect with people, so that they will actually listen to you and follow you. All these things are important because we can be the most beautiful people in the world if people don't hear you and see you and want to follow you because you're not connected. It doesn't really help a lot. And then finally, what's very important really is to have a strong foundation in your values and purpose,
Mm.
because that will carry you. And that's what I speak about also in the last part of the book, which is legacy,
Yes.
which is not about having a building named after you. It's about uh, combining successful fulfillment and therefore having also,
Yes.
again, the energy to go very far and then also to live a life that is not only successful on the outside, but where you feel, yeah, that's my life, and I'm living a full life and not only like the office life or my functional life. And so that's what I would say to any leader: in order to succeed, you should have these three.
Wow. Wow. Well, you have just given us a masterclass on leadership, and this has been so profound, so brilliant, and so incredibly practical. Before I let you go, I want to ask you just a few rapid fire questions. We're building an online library for leaders
Yeah.
to go be inspired, find out new books or podcasts or speakers. Is there a speaker that just captivates you every time you listen to them? You are just blown away. You want to, send the the YouTube video or, whatever it was to other people? Is there someone in that category that you just highly recommend?
Well, there are many, and I will be very boring with my answer if you ask me for that. I'm a great fan of Brené Brown
Oh, yeah.
because she is authentic and has messages that are so important. Like, she is passionate, authentic, and profound and well researched. So I always learn from her, and I find her inspiring, the way that she speaks, the way that she shows up. So it's not very original, but because many people know her.
That's
But
great.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, she's amazing. If you're a podcast listener, is there a podcast either, guilty pleasure, you just enjoy it, or if there's a leadership development podcast that you keep going back to because it's just got great value for your life and leadership and could recommend it?
Well, there is obviously Simon Sinek's A Bit of Optimism. That is not only on leadership, but that is, I find, so inspiring, especially in our days. And what else on leadership specifically? There's so many. I wouldn't like to cite one now. I mean, yours is great to start
Well,
with.
thank you.
I love it. And I'm also a great fan of Diary of CEO because
Oh, yeah.
it's very varied, but it comes to on leadership, actually, even when something is not about leadership, it comes back to very like topics that are very important for leadership.
Yes. And then lastly, tough question, but is there a book? Is there a book that has so profoundly impacted you that you could say, absolutely, leaders, you have to read this book?
Well, two would come to my mind.
Okay.
One is by Bob Anderson, Mastering Leadership,
Oh, yeah.
which you know it. It speaks actually about something that is very close to why I speak about love and leadership, creative leadership versus reactive tendencies. Fantastic book, and very, very thorough if you want to improve your leadership. The other is not a leadership book, but a book that I love by someone I utterly adore, which is William Ury. He is like one of the founders of the Harvard Negotiation Project. And my favorite book, actually, by him is Getting to Yes with Yourself and
Oh,
Other Worthy Opponents. So there's Getting to Yes, Getting Past No, like the books that are better known by him. But Getting to Yes with Yourself is fantastic because it points to you very often when you're in conflict with someone, actually, it's the inner enemy that you have to look at first before you start dealing
wow.
with the other person.
Wow. Well, we will add that to the library and can't wait for our listeners to go check those out. Tell us where we can send our listeners to find out more about you and what you do online.
Yeah, so very easily I can be found obviously on LinkedIn, Sylvia Rohde-Liebenau, and then on my website, via my website, Smart Power Method, all in one word, smartpowermethod.com. And there you can contact me. You can see what smart power is, and the masterclasses I give, the tools I use, and you can find out all about me there.
I would love it. And we'll make sure we'll put that in our weekly communication guide email. By the way, listeners, if you haven't signed up for that, every single week we send out this communication guide email with tips and different resources. And we'll put that in our Facebook group and make sure we also put the link to your book because it is absolutely incredible and I highly recommend it. I can't thank you enough for this time. This has been incredible. You've opened up the vault of your wisdom and so humbly shared it. And so I thank you. I know our listeners will love this. And it's just been an unbelievable delight to have you on the Speak with People podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been a huge pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. Thank you for leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thank you for every like and every comment. Every single time you cut and copy a link and send it to a coworker or a friend, it absolutely means the world and it helps each other transform our communication skills. Lastly, don't forget about a great resource that's available to you. our communication skills library. At the end of every episode, we ask each guest their favorite speaker, their favorite podcast, their favorite book, and we've compiled all of those resources together to give you an amazing library to continue your growth and development. Thank you again for being a listener and for being a part of the Speak with People community.